with the smell of a possible Conservative defeat coming in the near future, there is now starting to be a consistent worry that, oh no, might PR come into play? Might we really be forever locked out of an electoral system? Because if you look at sort of the voting procedures, even now, the Conservatives really don't get more than 30% of the vote in sometimes. And if that is the case, then even though the Conservatives under a PR system would still be quite a large party, the chances of actually being the governing party are significantly shortened. Because under that, you would obviously need to be, getting a number of seats. So maybe, for example, you would have sort of Labour. There might be sort of other parties who might go, well, we'll align with sort of Labour as long as they do this. It's coalition building, and that is sort of, I think, what a future sort of PR campaign would do to it, to Parliament. It would be a massive change at Westminster, and not just for Westminster. As we said before, I think this should be done to the House of Lords first, because as people sort of still very much and ah over sort of changing the voting system at Westminster, when you ask that question of the House of Lords, very often, more than not, the answer is absolutely the House of Lords needs to be changed and reformed. So that's why I always say I am massively in change. Don't get me wrong, I'm massively in change for sort of reforming the Westminster system, absolutely. But the easier change, and one that would ultimately also help to influence the Westminster change, would be the House of Lords change. So we'll see what happens. Of course, a lot of this will sort of come up at the next election, but we'll see. So let's go diving into this, because today we've got a very interesting article. Because normally, when we look at sort of PR and proportional representation, it tends to come from people who very, very much are on the left of these things, or maybe even the center left on these things. We've never really had something from someone who is a conservative. So I'm very, very interested to see what their take is on proportional representation. And this is quite interesting, because they do actually call the Conservative Party needs to start fundamentally thinking about proportional representation. So that is quite interesting. But as I've said before, something like this, like a big constitutional change to the voting system, does need to be very, very much cross-party. And this cannot be left to, one party alone. I said that before. I think this should be very, very much, all sort of, everyone needs to come together in this sort of thing. But again, if they choose not to get involved in this, well, hey, it's their fault. So there you go. So before we go diving into this article, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, as always, there is the links down below to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link, the Buy Me a Coffee, the Pony Club, and of course the YouTube thank you button as well. So let's go cracking on over into this. Over to Conservative Home, of the title of Conservatives Must Start Thinking Seriously About Proportional Representation. So the Conservative Party is at risk of making a historic error. While the melodrama of the last year has left the party preoccupied with avoiding defeat at the next election, it is failing to grapple with the issue that could determine its fortunes far beyond 2024, the end of First Past the Post, or FPTP. So proportional representation, or PR, will likely happen in our lifetime. But the way the electoral math is forming ahead of the next general election, it could come sooner rather than we anticipated. Despite Keir Starmer's double-digit lead in the polls, few imagine he is careering to a repeat of the 1997 landslide. He lacks the charisma of Tony Blair, and his lead is more in a protest at the last year of the turmoil than voters wanting a Labour government. Or at least I think this writer hopes that is the case. Bear in mind, when you look at Blair's big 1997 landslide, this was because the Tory polls never ever recovered after, I think it was Black Wednesday 1992. Like, their poll numbers never recovered. And yet you have had something very similar happen under Liz Truss. Even moving, even changing over to Sunak, even having some of these big victories that have been spun as these big PR things, they haven't really moved the election needle. The big budget, which was hoped would win Sunak some massive favour, hasn't really worked. His childcare plan has been massively criticised. His party is still massively internally fractured. So that is very, very much wishful thinking from this writer. Very much wishful thinking. So one of the laws of politics is that the polls narrower as the general election nears. Well, they certainly didn't in the 1997 one. And as the Conservative government is focused on improving the economy, the electoral pendulum will start to swing back. Or at least you hope. You hope. Like I say, the 1997 one you cite, that did not happen. It did not happen at all, but there you go. So that will greatly increase the chance of a hung parliament, in which Starmer's only way to number 10 should Labour emerge as the largest party, is via an electoral pact, where the price exacted by the smaller parties would be proportional representation. The Conservative Party needs to prepare for that scenario and have a sensible solution of its own to offer. If not, the danger is that the electoral reform will happen in a left-wing silo, resulting in a new system fundamentally built to lock us out. Again, if this electoral reform does happen, you're trying to sort of scaremonger here. I think very much so that this will happen in a left-wing silo and we'll be locked out. Depends what you go for. I mean, the STV, I think, is the right way to go for. The single transferable vote form of proportional representation, I think, is the best way to go. I think that's the way we need to look at and what we need to do. Ultimately, this will not lock out the Conservative Party. What it will mean is that the Conservative Party, under that system, would probably never have enough votes to be able to form a coherent government, or at least a ruling government, and it would need to vastly broaden its appeal if it ever is to win enough votes, or it would have to convince another party to join with it in order to secure that government, which would probably mean it would have to lean more into a centrist view, a lot more than it currently is doing now, when it is careering very, very hard into a right-wing track. But anyway, that's the talk for the time. So the current lack of engagement with this prospect is not only a strategic error, but also one with a stark variance with the party's history. For 2 centuries, the Conservatives led the way and then thrived after the major reforms to our electoral system, be it the Second Great Reform Act, spearheaded by Disraeli in 1876, or the 1928 Equal Franchising Act, delivered under Stanley Baldwin, which gave all women the vote. In more recent times, after the first 1974 election, saw the travesty, the travesty of Labour securing more seats with fewer votes than the Conservatives. Does this person want to sort of review past election history where we have seen the Conservatives do that? You call that a travesty, but it's not when it's happened to the Conservatives. Really, in especially more recent election history. Okay. The party had a sizable calculus backing the move to a proportional representation system that included cabinet figures such as Douglas Hurd and Sir Peter Bottomley, as well as breaking with the conservative historical stance. The party's abstention from the debate around electoral reform is also at odds with the tradition of Tory strength, pragmatism. The conservative ability to be able to adapt political realities is a critical component of what has made us the most successful political party on the planet, and we urgently need to locate it again in this debate. Well, certainly for the past couple of years, clearly predict, pragmatism has gone very clearly out the window, and Sunak certainly maybe isn't interested in bringing it back at all from what we can see at the moment. He may have scored a win on the Windsor framework, but the argument remains massively that if that is such a really good benefit for Northern Ireland being in the single market, then why does not the rest of that apply to the rest of the UK? After all, it's a trade bloc. We're now being told that we can join the trade bloc of the Pacific Partnership without a referendum. But the Pacific Partnership has a ton of rules and regulations, and we would be rule takers, not rule makers, which we were told consistently for years by Brexiteers that was a bad thing, despite, of course, the reality of how the EU worked. And of course, the secret courts. But now I'm going into a progressive partnership. Right? Like I say, we've done enough videos for the past recently about that. So if you are interested in the Pacific Partnership, go watch those other videos we made recently. But anyway, back to it. So the conservative ability to adapt to political realities is a crucial component which has made us the most successful political party on the planet. We urgently need to look at that again in this debate. Again, it would actually be interesting to see them debate this within the party, what that actually means. The prospect of electoral reform arises not only from a spectre of a left-wing coalition, but support of it is also rising in the country. Last year, the British Social Attitude survey recorded a public support for a move to PR had risen to over 50% for the first time since it began in 1983. It is also a mistake to view PR as a nearly looming disaster for the Conservatives. This is often the default view within the party, but it is not grounded in evidence. Firstly, we should be confident in our party and its record. People don't vote Conservative purely due to the lack of choice enforced by the current voting system. They do so because of our philosophy, common sense views, and the record of successive Conservative governments. Again, good luck running on your successive Conservative government at the next general election, because it's not very good. This is why we have fought on the PR systems across the UK. The Conservative Party has thrived and exceeded expectations. Take London, often billed as a Labour city. Yet, on the Greater London Assembly, of which I am one of 9 Conservatives to just 11 Labour members. Likewise, in Scotland, after 1997, where we lost all of our Scottish MPs, the consensus was that Conservatism was extinct north of the border. But under the leadership of Ruth Davidson, we became the second largest party, beating Labour into third place under their respective proportional systems in the Scottish Parliament and local elections. So that, to be honest, like I say, if you sort of take everything out, if you're trying to sort of convince Conservatives that actually, PR isn't a bad thing, it's not about, it wouldn't lock the Conservatives out, that is actually a good argument to make to people who are Conservatives who aren't yet on board with PR. So that is actually some sort of useful information to know, especially if you're ever debating PR with Conservatives. Those two examples of a sort of a PR system is actually a good one to use if they are ever sort of concerned under that. So, but let's continue. So, yes, a more proportional system at Westminster, such as the additional member system or the AMS used in Scotland and Wales, would leave more room for Labour and smaller parties to try and come into our heartlands. But it would also allow us to use these same opportunities in theirs. It would also be an opportunity to reach millions of new prospective Conservative voters and have conversations we have never had before. That is actually, again, if you are trying to convince someone who is a Conservative, that's not a bad position to take. And the AMS system, again, I know it sort of works well in sort of Scotland. I think maybe people would disagree, but I would prefer, as I've said before, single transferable vote. I think that is the best PR system. I think that's the one, to be honest, we should be going with. But anyway, back to it. So, competition is a virtue that we extol in other areas of British life. So, it is a strange omission that we do not see the benefits of this in our political system. I understand that as a proponent of PR, I am in the minority in my party, nor am I labouring under the illusion that this piece will instantly sway the majority of members to this case. However, I am deeply concerned that we do not have a thought out or well argued position on what could be the most significant change to our political system in recent memory. PR is likely coming. And I would say likely coming. I would say PR is coming. Like it or not, PR is coming. And I think she is right that we will see PR in our lifetimes. I think that is very likely because the PR movement is becoming more and more mainstream. It is gathering more strength. And compared back to 2012, where we first had that big sort of change to the AV system, where a lot of people on the PR side didn't vote for it because they wanted a different system because they felt that the AV system was essentially the first past the post system of PR. They didn't go out and they didn't vote for it. Hence why, even when you look at the numbers, it was a very, very poorly attended sort of referendum. So PR is gathering strength. The electoral reform groups are gathering strength. Labour for PR, once laughed at and derided as that will never happen, has had incredible successes. So if this person is actually serious about this, she should make a group based on Labour for PR, but call them Conservatives for PR, do the exact same thing. It will be very interesting to see what successes they might have in the future, but we'll see. Like I say, Labour for PR has pulled off some fantastic wins. And that PR movement is growing ever and ever bigger. So PR isn't likely coming, it is coming. So, and we will need to engage it so that it happens in a conservative way that runs with the grain of our political traditions. Again, a conservative way. What do you mean by conservative way? Like that in itself raises sort of a big question. Ultimately, I think this person would want the AMS system, the additional member system that they have in Scotland. I think that may be what they want. But like I say, I think single transferable vote, I think is the best way to go. So it is a debate that we can and should face confidently, as we have throughout our history and try not to hide away from. The Tories should be confident in the wider appeal of our values and work to try and ensure that we build an electoral system that is fair and represents what the country wants. Let's be confident that, more often than not, there will be, as has been in the past, Conservative government. And again, that has been very much because of first past the post. So, pro PR, yes. What exactly a PR system would look like formed by Conservatives, I'm not sure. That didn't really explain that. I get maybe she wants the system like they have in Scotland. I get the feeling she didn't exactly say. Um, but that would be quite interesting. In fact, uh, who is this? Emma Best. So if this person, this is the author, sees this, I would love to speak to you about proportional representation, because I'm someone on the Labour side who also wants proportional representation. So in a in a reaching across the aisle moment here, um, if you were ever interested in having a conversation with someone who wants PR, but but's on like a different side to you, I'd be up for having that conversation. I'd be very interested in having that conversation, because there's a couple of questions I would love to ask you about just some of the things that's come up in your article. Um, but yeah, if you are interested, let me know. Reach out to me. I'm on Twitter. I'm on the Facebooks. You can reach me. Should be able to reach me very easily through those. But as always, like I say, let me know. And of course, thank you very much to everyone watching. And of course, again down below. Patreon page, you know the drill by now, all there down below. Go and check them out. And as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.